We are truly talking through some of the greatest challenges that men face in life, and we're providing solutions and tools to break free from these greatest challenges.
This is the Untamed podcast, where only the few dare to go. We're building a community of adventurous high achievers who refuse to trade our dreams for comfortable mediocrity so that we can unleash our untamed potential. Could you be one of the untamed few? Now, your untamed hosts, Marc Lucas and Joel Fritz.
Untamed few. If you will do this, I can guarantee you will have success and a breakthrough.
Okay, Marc. You
Just
put it out there, man.
Just calling everybody out, myself included.
Oh, boy. All right. Well, I'm excited. You got me excited.
That's where we're headed.
People are with us.
Guaranteed success and a breakthrough.
That's right.
Guaranteed.
But this is not, we're not blowing hot air here.
No.
Because what we're going to talk about today
36 years of hot air.
Yeah, 36 years of hot air is not hot air because it either resonates with people or it doesn't.
Right.
And you and I have 36 combined full-time professional years working with people in personal development.
We're only 23, but somehow...
But when you put them...
That's true.
You look great,
That's true.
You're very mature for 23.
I am in a good hat right now, and I like your shirt, and mine's actually pretty
23,
good 23,
Marc? I mean,
No,
you could have tried 30
no.
something. Or
I'm not
whatever,
23.
Yeah.
No, you're not 23.
In case you were wondering.
But 36 years.
Yeah, 36
Combined.
years. So after all that time, we've had a lot of coffee meetings, a lot of jittery mornings after drinking too many coffees, listening to guys talk. We've done this for a long time. And when people are sharing, they need time. They need to get themselves out of the ordinary into a situation where they can process things that they don't normally think about or process. And so when we have found that over this time that if we can get guys out of their ordinary for 3 nights, roughly 4 days, then we can get more work done in that time than 6 months at the coffee table.
Maybe a year of coffee shop talk.
Absolutely.
I totally agree. And the great thing is even here now today in this very moment with this being dropped, there is a link right below to be able to talk about this adventure retreat.
Yeah, because we're going to do an adventure retreat.
We're doing an adventure retreat, and there's details below about this adventure retreat.
Yeah.
And we wanted to bring guys into a journey with us, not only on that adventure retreat, but to bring them back to an adventure retreat that you and I did together.
That's right. And so that's what we're going to talk about today is we're going to tell some stories from this adventure retreat. And it's worth listening to because this is not some sort of ad or pitch that we're doing. This is genuine experience that we had together. Marc and I saw it as an opportunity to go surfing with one another and that sort of a thing. But really, we pulled a whole lot of people with us on that adventure. And some pretty cool stuff happened. So it was an awesome time.
It really was. Why don't you give the guys some context around this great group of guys that came with us?
Yeah.
Why don't you give them some context around who these guys were? Some things that they were experiencing in their life and really why they were sensing they needed breakthrough.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, we've done a number of retreats. I in particular have scheduled these things at different venues, like snowboarding stuff. We've gone out, done power sports, etc. But this particular one was in San Clemente, California, in a really nice time of the year, September. Oh, and it's sweet
Great
out there.
Surf,
so it's incredible.
Glorious.
But I was reaching out to guys that were in a stage of their life where a lot of them had kids. They were going through difficult things. I remember one of the guys had gone through a divorce recently. They were at an age and in a stage where things were happening and they were happening fast around them. Which means it makes it even more important that you get out of the ordinary and get into a place where you can listen and ask substantive questions.
Right.
And so that you can have good answers for making decisions in the midst of all the stuff going on. So these guys, a number of business owners, I remember one guy in particular is a really cool guy, was actually bridging into a career as a YouTuber who was giving financial advice. And I won't get any more specific than that. But he was in the middle contemplating this move. And we got to talk about that. Yeah, major decision for him because that's a leap, right? And he's been very successful since. It's super cool.
He's a
there's a business owner, I think, some very close friends. But I want to talk about one guy in particular right now.
Yeah.
And he was a business owner, but he was reluctant to come. He gave me kind of the, okay, I'll do it. Yeah, I'm there. I'm like, are you sure you're there? Is this really going to happen? I don't know. It doesn't sound real committal to me.
Yeah.
And sure enough, we're headed out there, and I'm calling and no answer, and finally like, okay, yeah, kind of, where are you? Blah, blah, blah. And this weird back and forth. And then
we're already there,
he
right?
wasn't. And
he
then
wasn't
we were there.
Yeah. He didn't come
and
with us.
He didn't come in anybody's car.
That's
and
right.
it kind of seemed like, oh, well, there's this happening and this happening. And he finally showed up late after everybody had gone to sleep, which meant he ended up with the couch, right? We had this big fat house and everybody had picked out
Just
their
a
spots.
fat crib, right?
And
Such
he
a nice
was stuck
pad.
like right in the middle of the whole thing. So anytime somebody had to go to the bathroom, they were walking right by him. So he's sleeping on the couch. But he came. And what was fascinating is the weekend went on. And this is what people really need to hear is the weekend went on. He started to say the things like, I didn't want to come. I couldn't, in my mind, I couldn't see. It just didn't fit for me. I didn't want to be here, but I knew I needed to be here.
Right.
And as he said those things, he said, I'm so glad that I came. And you could see things change in him, and you could see that him break free and kind of crack this shell and start to talk about things in his life that he was struggling with that he wasn't talking about with anybody else, that he didn't have answers for. So he starts asking the right questions, starts finding answers, internal answers. He starts developing a crew around him, his few. He gets some friendships out of there. And this is something that I remember, and the reason that I'm telling this story, Mark. That winter, I got a phone call. And it was one of those phone calls where you go, wow, I haven't gotten a call from that guy in a while. Mm-hmm. And I pick up the phone, and I'm so glad I answered in that moment and didn't let it go to voicemail. Because when I picked up that phone on the other end, this guy was in hysterics. I don't, Joel, I'm so glad you answered the phone. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. We were skiing, and my son just fell off the chairlift 80 feet. In the air.
That's right.
And I was like, bro, tell me about it. Just talk me through it. And I just listened to him talk as he talked about this horrific experience and how he was at the hospital. And he goes, I don't know if my boy's okay. I don't know if my boy's okay. I don't know if my boy's okay. And miraculously, the doctors were talking about how they don't even know how it happened. He must have just kind of bounced just right. I forget his injuries, but they were so minor. But as his dad was talking about this, he called me. Mm-hmm. I was blown away, but it's that sort of a thing that he decided to go on this retreat. He made connections with people that he could talk to. And then in a moment of crisis, when he didn't know who to call or what to do, he makes that connection. That connection was forged. It was an attachment. Something that he knew there was somebody who could be on the other end of that line in his moment of crisis. And I got the opportunity to be there. Again, it's not every day. It's not all the time. It's not all the time that I can pick up the phone. I have to let it go to voicemail. We all have to let it go to voicemail because there are things in front of us. But I picked up the phone that time, and there he was, and he needed me in that moment. And so it just really struck me as we started talking about this adventure retreat that guy really stuck out in my mind because he had that experience. He had that breakthrough on the retreat. And then he had a crisis not too long afterward and had somebody to call. So cool.
It's
so
just
important.
so powerful. And again, imagine if he didn't have that moment with us and the guys that are with us and the breakthrough that happened with him is just, it's indescribable. We can't even describe it because it was so powerful. And I think some of the things, and again, we're really kind of working through some of the questions that we're going to ask men on this adventure retreat.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But some of the things that we know within the core of the untamings that we walk guys through, some of those questions, just so you know and you're aware as you're listening to this conversation, is this. And my wife said this like in the elevator kind of pitch when she's asked me like, what exactly in like the infancy phase of Untamed? She's like, okay, in the origin of this, people were asking me at work, my wife's work, what do you guys do? And what's the elevator pitch? What's the elevator speech? And I said, we kind of went back and forth a couple of times. And she said, and this is something that we will do on an adventure retreat. She said, Untamed, you and I, Joel and I, we help people find meaning and purpose in their ordinary lives. So these adventure retreats are catalytic to help men find more meaning and more purpose in your life.
Ordinary lives. Yeah.
In their ordinary lives. And the reality is that, and we can share briefly, there were some questions that we asked these specific men. And I think some of those questions, I'll just mention one. And I remember myself wrestling with this question. It's a question that I'd heard before. And we've had these kind of moments of thinking legacy, moments of, I remember somebody asked me when I was early on into full-time pastoral ministry at 27, they said, Marc, because it was my first funeral service. And I remember how nervous I was at 27 doing a funeral service. And it was for a student that died in a car accident. And again, there's so many question marks and so many people there that have the big giant question mark of why, God, why? Why would you allow this to happen? And I remember leaning into my mentor at that time and saying, how am I going to help people grapple with the why, grapple with their purpose, grapple with the purpose of why this would happen? And I remember the dialogue that we had back and forth, and he began to process with me a passage that actually comes from Ecclesiastes that says, it is better to go to a place of mourning and a funeral than to go to a place of a party and a feast, because we remember what our purpose is and what's most important. And I think these type of moments when we do an adventure retreat, we push people in beautiful ways through surfing and white knuckle experiences out of your comfort zone to be able to wrestle with some of these deeper questions like, when you do die, when we do die, Joel, what are going to be the words and the sentiments that people say about us? What do we want to be remembered for? And then now, how do we become that person? So it crystallizes a lot of clarity and understanding. Like, I began to think through, what are the legacy words? What are the words that I want people to speak about me when I do pass away? Hopefully I'm in my 90s surfing on some big giant wave and I go out that way. Yeah, like triple overhead and I just die that way. But the reality is in 97, like a 36-foot wave in Hawaii. But the reality is, like, it begins in a beautiful way with other men to get away in a new surrounding. And we're going to talk about the reason why we push people to do an activity like surfing. But it breaks people down. It breaks us down to begin to wrestle with some of those deeper questions in life. And I remember one of the questions that you asked the men was this: write a letter to yourself, your 18-year-old self. What would you want to share with your 18-year-old self? What are the things that you have gleaned? What are the things that you've learned? What are the lessons that you've learned over whatever the course of that time might be? And begin to really pontificate and ponder that. And at the end of the day, there is so much wisdom and knowledge that comes from that, because at the end of the day, when you go on this adventure retreat with us, there's going to be some probing questions that we ask you, because we want to prime your heart. We want to prime your soul. We want to create the best atmosphere possible, from the chef to the place that we stay that's 5-star.
We eat good.
We eat real good. To the excursions that we take. We want to create the trip for you so that you will, as I said in the beginning, you will experience the breakthrough that you want right now.
Buddy, I'm sorry, but I got to get up and go because I got to get on the adventure retreat right now. It's too good.
We're leaving right now.
Come with us right now.
Bags are packed.
Bags are packed.
Surfboards out there. And it might not be surfing on this one. We don't know. We have some plans.
So
we're leaning that direction.
I want to comment on what you were saying. That question got me. What would write a letter to your 18-year-old self? That was not easy for me to do, and it wasn't easy for others to do. But you know what was even more powerful is that they shared it with each other. Now, if you're an introvert, you may go, "Oh, that's it. I'm not going." When you share something like that with people, and then they embrace you afterward, There's nothing like it. Yeah. This is not an introvert extrovert thing. This is a human thing. And human beings need other human beings around them to share their experience with them. And you know where that doesn't happen to the degree that it needs to happen is on our phones while we're scrolling. That does not happen when we are just in a work context. It does not happen when we are in a transactional relationship with somebody getting a job done. It has to move past that. You have to have a shared exchange. And we have learned how to create something where people can have that shared exchange. But before we can open up to each other, we have to have a shared experience. And surfing was that shared experience. And I'm dying to tell this
Share
part
that story.
because this is crazy what happened on it.
Yeah.
It worked exactly like we set it up because we watched this. We've watched this happen so many times that we know, so we can actually build it into the experience. And it's different for every single person that goes, for a lot of different reasons. But we're able to build it in. So this particular one was surfing, surf lessons. And the majority of the people that went had never surfed before.
Never.
And that's exactly what we wanted. Now, we had surfed before, so we got an instructor, a totally professional dude, to come and teach them. And then we went and caught some waves at a beach
As
a few
early
miles
as
away,
dawn
right?
patrol, we were out in the water, yeah.
And so what was so funny about it is that they just got pummeled. The learners, they just got pummeled. They learned how to surf and what to do. And the instructor was out there pushing them into the waves. But they were just getting hammered. So they're pretty exhausted at the end of the day.
It was a good size swell too.
Yeah. That's true. It's true. And so they got beat up pretty good. And when they got home, they all had their, stories about this happened and that happened, and this person rolled over, got held under, whatever it was. And we had a good dinner that night, and we talked about things. But it started opening our hearts, and that's what adventure does for us. When we go and share in something like that, we put ourselves into a learner's posture. We begin to say, we open ourselves to new instruction. We open ourselves to new thoughts. We open ourselves to things that we may have pushed off before. And so it was setting the stage. But what happened the next day was really funny to me because midday comes around and we had already had our morning session.
Right.
And then I remember one of them, they must have picked the leader that they were going to put
the leader
forward.
of the coup. Yeah.
So they come forward and it's like a coup.
Yeah.
Definitely a coup. They want a mutiny is what it is, right? Hey, we're on a ship. We're by the ocean. And they come up and they go, hey, Joel, we're not going surfing this afternoon. I'm like, the collective we? Who's the we? Oh, we are not going surfing. Who is the we?
The fellas.
And he's like, well, the fellas and I, we've decided. We've made a decision. I go, you
Brews
made
and
a
burgers,
decision.
we've decided, right? Yeah.
Decided we're not going to go surfing because we got beat up too much yesterday. We're going to go get burgers and brews.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? Okay, let me think this through. And I
Hard
paused.
no. Yeah.
And I go, okay, hard no.
Yeah.
You have come on an adventure retreat to learn something new, and you're going to complete the process.
Yeah.
Now, let me explain to you the way that this is set up. You went through the hard work yesterday. You've had a good night's sleep. You've had a good meal. And now we're going to go to a break that is going to fit you a lot better. And trust me, I've surfed this break. It's a gentle break. So you learned in something rough, but now you're going to go into something gentle. And I won them over, and we all went surfing at Doheny in
Good break.
Dana Point.
Yeah.
And such a great spot. It's a great spot, but it's a very gentle wave. And so they had these big long boards. And guess what? Everybody stood up on the board. So they have all their photos. They have all the success. They all feel the camaraderie of overcoming something that they didn't know how to do. They learned to surf, and then they stood up and they got the reward. So they got breakthrough. Yep. And that is one of the reasons that we can guarantee breakthrough. Now, hopefully we're able to find adventures or for that suit the particular individual, right? But whatever it may be, we like to put people in a situation where they're challenged and then they experience that external breakthrough so that they can experience an internal breakthrough. And then that night, I remember we were sharing those stories, those letters to the 18-year-old self.
After that surfing breakthrough.
You got it.
Yeah.
And so we had the breakthrough, and then we started to do that. And you just listen to these things. And there were people, we said, you don't have to share if you don't want to share. Did anybody not share?
Everybody shares.
Everybody shares openly. At that point, right? Because if you're the introvert, we want to make sure that the introvert, if a person really is fearful, it's creating anxiety, that's not the point. We want the discomfort to be in the activity that we're doing, right? but everybody shared because they understood they had all done something together, and now they wanted to share in a deeper part of their life. And it worked, and it was great. And then you have that great story afterward of then there was a situation in a crisis where somebody had made a new friendship, and they called when they were in a moment of crisis. And that's so much of the point, that we put people together and allow them to make new friendships. So it's almost like we can guarantee two things if people go and do this. You get breakthrough, and you're going to find an opportunity for a new friend.
With great substantial depth and connection. And I think because you had that physical breakthrough, and because the guys had that physical breakthrough in that second session of surfing, that opened up in beautiful ways that internal inward breakthrough that was so connected.
Right.
That second night of us sharing, I think we had steaks that night, but the second night of us sharing while we're having some beautiful steaks, there was just this deep, profound connection that was maybe some of the deepest connection these men had had.
Yeah.
Maybe ever, but definitely in quite some time.
Right.
And the camaraderie and the brotherhood and the connection they had with one another. Yeah. Because I was on the outside invited in.
It's true.
I was serving in a different capacity in a different place.
That's right.
But still, even me coming from the outside in and being a part of this with you, I still felt connected.
It's incredible.
And you had all the relationships coming into it.
Right.
So just to identify that if you're thinking yourself, and maybe you are more of the introvert hearing this, if you're thinking, I don't know who I'm going to bring, if you bring somebody, great. But if you think to yourself, I'm an introvert and I don't know anybody, that was me.
Yeah.
And I didn't know anybody, because what we do in the way that we orchestrate these intentionally, even the most introverted person felt so connected. Even the person that had no relational equity, which was me, with anybody there except yourself, but really there was no connection that I had to these guys except through you.
Yeah.
And even at that point, you and I weren't really navigating life where we are today by any means.
No, not like this.
Not like this by any means. So there's so much that happens when you get away on an adventure retreat and to experience breakthrough, the way that God wants people to break through, and even some of the questions right now that you and I are really walking through in the way of our consulting and coaching, and also in the ways right now of our webinar, is this. We are truly talking through some of the greatest challenges that men face in life.
No doubt.
And we're providing solutions and tools to break free from these greatest challenges. Yeah. So that's what we get to do. I remember having a conversation within the context of some guys just recently, and they were asking me about the adventure retreat. And they were asking me, and they were saying, what are some things that we get to do on the event? Because two have already raised their hand and said, we're going. Like, they're coming on this retreat. What are some things that we will do in the context of the conversation around some great food like steaks and some well-prepared meals by an amazing chef? In this process, I said, let me just give you two potential conversations. One is a conversation on adventure retreat. We talk about right now as you look at your life, and most of the guys that we're with right now have been successful in the marketplace. Right now, as you look at this next chapter in your life, and you look at creating more purpose, what would it look like for a dialogue where we help you understand the steps you need to take to experience more purpose in your life? And they're like all like in a beautiful way, kind of leaning in, Joe, like, oh, that's good. I like that. And then the second one I share with them is this, as an idea, suggestion. And again, this is modified based on the individual needs of the guys that are there, but we have some clear direction in what we do with success. But the other one was this. And I asked the guys, because all the guys in this group of 5 that we're having this conversation, they're all married guys. And they said, and I said this to them, I said, what if on the adventure retreat, there was some dialogue around we can create and we have specific plans in place. I even have a 21-day plan to create more intimacy in your marriage. And again, they're all leaning in. Who doesn't want these things? Who doesn't want more purpose?
Yeah.
And understanding and more clarity around that purpose and how to cultivate more purpose in your life at whatever place you are in the marketplace.
Right.
But probably you've been very successful. And the second one, who doesn't want more intimacy with their wife?
Yeah.
These are just some ideas of what you and I have really been praying and navigating and been leading in the past over a culmination of, like we said, 36 years to be able to take men away and to be able to experience personal development.
Yeah.
To really be an advisor to personal development.
Right.
As a personal development advisor.
Yeah. You know, I think I got to tell a story. And this is it's a bit of a difficult story, but it's hitting me pretty hard right now, so I'm going to share it. People need to get away on something like this, and they need to form an action plan. And you were starting to talk about that action plan. Yep. So whether it be marriage, everybody has a different need at a different time. I mean, when I'm coaching, I look at 5 spheres of success and just simply ask the question, which one do you want to focus on right now? Because we have a tendency to focus on career, but we need to focus on the others at times. So which is it? I won't get into those, but in this story that I need to tell real quick, it's where I learned how important the action plan was. I had conceptually put together the idea of how important action plans were. But about 20 years ago, I was leading, it was actually an adventure trip. It was a missions trip to Peru. And there was a young man that went along, and he had an addiction, a very strong addiction. And, but he went, he's an incredible individual. And he had a breakthrough. And he said, I don't want to go back and things to be the same. I said, then let's make an action plan. And that guy needed an action plan. And he made his action plan. And he lived out his action plan for 30 days. And at 21 years old, he had a heart attack and died. And you don't know how important that action plan is going to be. But he could have died with people around him that didn't care about him. But because he walked out that action plan at that time, he literally died in the arms of one of his closest friends. A very hard story for me to tell. Very made a huge impression on me. He died with people who really loved him. He died with people who really loved him, and he had cleaned up his life for even that brief amount of time. Whew. People need action plans, and I'll tell you what, every time I've talked to anybody since then, I know that talk is cheap. But when somebody puts skin in the game, when somebody makes the plan, and they get people around them to help them, hold them accountable, to implement the plan, you can see success.
Yeah. I appreciate you getting vulnerable and sharing that.
Yeah, that's a hard story to tell.
With us in the Untamed
It's a
field.
really tough one.
Yeah. I think really we're just at a place inviting people to join us on an adventure retreat.
Come on,
let's do this. I can guarantee you will not regret it.
Yep. It's true.
We all desire breakthrough in a myriad of ways, but we all desire breakthrough.
Yeah.
And you will experience breakthrough.
Yep.
The 100% success rate.
It's true.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
If this episode sparked something in you, please subscribe and even share it with someone who's ready to take their life to the next level. We're always on the hunt for men who are looking to become untamed and release their untamed potential. Also, if you found value in this conversation, then please rate the podcast and leave a comment. It makes a huge impact in building our community. We'll see you next time when the adventure continues, or maybe when yours begins.